Okay guys, in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to begin your pen drawing for class and just give you some tips and pointers on the best approach for starting this. So just to back up, you're using a ballpoint pen and you can use blue, red, or black. These are Bic pens, but they can be any brand is fine. And I'm actually going to use black because it's classic and I think it'll create some nice contrast in what I'm doing, which I'm going to explain to you about in a minute. And then I'm also going to have a gel pen handy for adding highlights or fixing any little mistakes or blemishes. This is a good thing to have handy while doing a pen drawing. So what I have here, I know it's different than this. This was my original example, right? And I used that as an example to show you how to set up the still life, but then how to approach the tracing and transferring method. But then I got this really good idea sort of while I was working on this, in the meantime, coming up with this other idea that I thought would make for a really great pen drawing. So I'm actually going to build this one up and work on this pen drawing while you guys work on yours. So using the same technique of, pen techniques, hatching, cross-hatching, stipling, but within this piece that's a little bit different than what you're working on. So basically, I've been making a body of work that has a lot to do with like nature versus man type themes, with the way man kind of encroaches on nature, nature kind of reclaiming and taking back spaces and just going back and forth with that in this ongoing body of work that I've been making. And I was out jogging one day and I found, or I always look at this telephone pole that has like this really cool vine creeping up it. And I just got this vision to do this drawing. And I thought, oh my God, my art too is making a pen drawing. This would make a really fantastic pen drawing. So that's how the idea was born. I've kind of switched gears. I won't be developing this one as my ongoing example and demo. I'm going to be developing this one, okay? But I will be using the same basic techniques. What I've done here is I put down some watercolor first, and then I let that dry. That's the orange. And then I let that dry. And then I did the same process of tracing and transferring. So here's my photocopy. I coated the back with graphite, I laid it down, I transferred it. So I used all the same process that you guys did over that watercolor once it was dry, because I just thought with this idea, having a field of color back there would really enhance this further. Okay, and then what I did before I'm starting with pen is I just laid in a little bit, like I wanted to create contrast with the green against the yellowy orange color. So that was my vision for this piece. You guys aren't really dealing with color, you're just dealing with all value, but I figured I would just explain what I have going on here to start. So next I'm going to be developing this telephone pole with black pen. And as I said before, I think the black, I could use any color, right? I could use blue or red too if I wanted to, but I think the black is gonna look really nice and stand out really well against the colors that I have going on here. So that was the thought for contrast there. So a couple of do's and don'ts as you're beginning your pen drawing. So first off, what I don't want you to do, and I feel like this is probably going to be the thing you want to have the tendency to do right off the bat, but I do not want you to take your pen and outline everything, okay? Everything is done here in line with pencil. So I just feel like the natural tendency is for everybody to go and want to outline everything. As I mentioned before, a continuous flat outline, outlining everything, will flatten your work in the end. There might be areas like the edge of this leaf, for example, where it's just like a light value up next to a darker value. And to have a dark outline there would really flatten out that form. So I want you to resist the temptation to go and outline everything with pen. You've got the outline there in pencil as a guide, but there might be areas where you just want to treat it like a value up next to a value to get the best sense of form in your drawing. So do not outline, just start with shapes of value as I'm about to do now. The other thing I would suggest is I would start in one section towards the top, because if you start at the bottom, you might be like leaning your hand in the work you've already done as you go to do stuff at the top. And by the end, that might really smudge the pen, or you'll have to hold your hand in a really uncomfortable way to avoid doing that. So I would start at the top somewhere. For me, like the action is over towards the right, so this is where I'm going to start. And I would work in smaller sections and like build up one section, move to the next, build up another, move to the next. Now that is not how I would recommend doing, say, like a painting, for example. If we were making a painting right now, I would be probably telling you to do the opposite. I'd be like, let's lay in really basic general forms first and make coverage, and then go and get detailed. But for something like this, like a pen drawing, it's so intricate and it takes so many layers and it's so time consuming. It really is the type of thing where you're like, you know, you're working on it, and before you know it, you realize your nose is like an inch away from the drawing, right? You get like really invested in it. You get really invested in the smaller details, and it really kind of forces you to like get up close and work on smaller areas at a time. So that is the way I would approach this. I would not, take my pen and like just start kind of hatching everywhere just to lay in a base. I really think I would be methodical about it. Now, if there's another way that you feel you want to approach your particular subject matter, of course, I'm not going to stop you. This is just how I'm telling you to deal with this, so that you don't make like a whole ton of mistakes that you have to go back and fix later. I think if you just kind of go section by section, it'll really help you. Okay, so I've decided that as I develop the wood grain on this telephone pole, it really is very vertical. So I think I'm going to use a hatching technique to build up and show the value, but also show the texture of the wood grain, like this split wood kind of a feeling that's here. By the way, while I work, I would have my picture near me, as you see I have here, but I also want to have my picture open either on my computer or my phone, because this printout is not a really high quality printout, and I really want to be able to see values very well. So I would have the picture, for something like this, if you want to make it portable and be able to like sit on the couch and work on it, or sit on your bed and work on it, or go to a friend's house and work on it, you really could have your picture on your phone, have your pen, have your drawing, and you can just go to it. It's very portable in that way. So that's what I would recommend. Sometimes I find it annoying to refer to a picture on my phone because I have to constantly keep, the screen keeps falling asleep, and then I have to like punch in my login number, my password, and that's a pain. So I typically tend to work from my computer screen when working from a picture reference, but I'll leave that up to you. But I wouldn't just rely on your photocopy, especially if it's in black and white, because a lot of these printers that we have at home are not like super high quality printers, and the values are either generalized like too dark in areas or too bright in other areas. So look at the picture, have the picture handy as well to refer to. So like I said before, even though I have this strong urge to go and outline this leaf, I'm not going to. I'm not really sure how I want to deal with the leaves yet, like if I want to hatch within them, or maybe I'll build up some of the shadow with colored pencil after. That doesn't really apply to you because you guys aren't using color. But for now, I'm just going to work around them. So referring to my picture up on my computer screen, can't see it, but it's here in front of me, and I also have the printout too. So And I'm just gonna work around the leaves and just getting the information that I see in my picture. As I'm doing this, one thing I'm thinking I might end up doing is, even though I see all the lines as being very vertical in direction, I might think about, after, going in with a very, very light, almost like a cross contour line, and do some cross hatching very lightly in like a rounded, like a horizontal rounded kind of a direction, just to drop in a little bit more value, even things out, but also show like the rounded form of this pole. I think might end up working well. Another thing that's happening right off the bat is I'm finding that I'm having to make comparisons between values like already. So I notice when I look at the top of this telephone pole, there's a lot of light hitting it, right? So a lot of times you might be like, oh, I'm gonna leave that white. But one thing you wanna do is always compare your lighter values to the white of the paper. That really helps me. And if you look at this value next to the white of the paper, it isn't white right there. It's a very light value, right? It's like a light gray with light hitting it. So it is a very light value, but it wouldn't remain white. I would drop in a very pale value there with my pen, because it's not quite the white of the paper. So if you compare your light values, which tend to be the trickier values to get with pen, to the white of the paper, that's something that really helps me. Always comparing values when I do a value drawing or painting. Always comparing my dark values to my darkest dark, my light values to my lightest light. And eventually those comparisons just become intuitive. You don't even realize you're doing it anymore, but you still do it all the time. Just holding my pen here at an angle, because I am dealing with a fairly light value. Plus I'm thinking I wanna go back in with some cross hatching as well. So I'm not pressing down heavily. The only times I'm pressing down with a little bit more force is when I've got these like darker passages in here, these cracks that show up as dark. What I like about this subject is I can make a wrong move and you really wouldn't be able to tell. It's such a like uneven, imperfect form as it is, that it doesn't have to be perfect. I can just kind of get the feeling of the wood grain. It's already starting to stand out from that background, which is good. And as I move my way down, it'll stand out even more because it gets much darker the further down the pole I get. I'm really excited about rendering this pole number. And I think it's metal. So I'm gonna pick up some of the highlights with the gel pen. I already have a plan for that. But you can see how I chose a technique that works for what I'm doing, right? Like something like stippling, for example, for this subject would not really be appropriate. It would take forever. It wouldn't give me the wood grain effect that I want. So really think about your subject and what is the best technique. You know, and it might be a couple of different techniques depending on the different objects you have in your setup too. As I said, I'm just kind of like ignoring the leaves for now because I'm not entirely sure how I want to deal with them. Just going to work around them and deal with them after. It gets very dark under here because there's a shadow. Again, the tendency might be to outline the numbers, you know, and if now and then you want to just throw in like a very loose contour line here and there just to help you define the edge of something very definite like that, you can. But I would still just do that work as you go. Wouldn't go through and outline everything right off the bat because you might regret that outline later when you're trying to make your subjects have form. I think one of the other benefits to working in smaller chunks is something like this. Filling all this in with hatching and cross hatching could be very overwhelming, but if in my mind I just kind of think, all right, just do the area you're working on, just develop one little area at a time, you can just get really like absorbed in it without thinking about the whole thing as a larger picture yet, but just working on each individual section. It's kind of calming. It's less overwhelming. I think I'm gonna try putting in some of those cross-hatching marks now. I'm gonna let this be sort of the guide for me when it comes to the direction of the cross-hatching that I do, because it's already following the contour of the cylinder here. So it's a good reference point. Just love the way cross-hatching evens things out. Like, I like the look of hatching too, but I feel like cross-hatching just seals the deal a little bit more. You might find as you go, you might want to start to erase some of the pencil lines left behind, because in the end we're going to do that. And I like to do that as I go so I can really see, like without that pencil line, I do have to get much more defined on that edge with the pen. So that's something you can do at the very end if you want. Or as you go. I would wait for the pen to dry a little bit in between, because the eraser could smudge the pen. I decided to stop for a minute and actually tape off my top edge because I sort of like the way my composition sort of stays within like the edges of the paint splatter, and there's white on the edges. And then the image just kind of like ends here, ends here, ends here. So I'm actually gonna tape off the sides so that as I build up the pen and stuff, it'll just like stop right at that lip of tape there. So that's something you can do too if you want to create a border. Someone had actually asked me about that. That's great to do. I use this like matting special tape for matting pieces, but I find that it is very sticky. So what I do is I take the tape and I kind of like pat it on my pants or my shirt first to get some lint on it so that it's not quite as sticky. Because the last thing you want to do is pull up your tape and it pulls up some of your piece of paper. Especially this piece of paper I'm working on is not super high quality. So I made sure to lint up the sticky side of that tape really well before I taped it down. Just takes a little bit of the stick away, but not completely. And that trick really works pretty well. I probably should have done it before I did my watercolor there, but I didn't really think of it until now. So just working my way down this pole. I think I'll do a little bit more here and then work into the number and then just keep working down as you guys work on your pen drawings. Good luck and have fun.